Welcome back to Panacea9 podcast with Gloria Y, where we explore bold ideas, powerful stories, and often the people who change the world. Today, I want to talk about rebellion. The rebel in me is surging and wants to pay tribute to rebels who changed the world. I'm not talking about the kind of rebels who break windows or start riots. I'm talking about principled defiance, the sort of rebellion that challenges injustice, rewrites history, and changes the world for the better for all human beings. These are the rebels with a cause, the rule breakers who bent history in a better direction, the disruptors who saw the world that could be, not just the one that was. So buckle up as we dive into the stories of four of these rebels who prove that saying no can sometimes be the most powerful word in the world. It's December 1st, 1955. That's right. Before some of us were born, a woman sits quietly on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. A black woman. The bus driver tells her to give up her seat for a white passenger. She refuses. Her name was, yes, you guessed it right, Rosa Parks. And in that very moment, as she uttered the word no, history changed forever. Rosa Parks didn't just say no that day because she was tired and needed to sit. She was organized and prepared to start a movement. A longtime activist at the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, she was fed up with the humiliation of segregation. So what happened when she said no? She was arrested, just as she had thought she would be. And her arrest ignited the Montgomery bus boycott. The Montgomery bus boycott was led by then an unknown young preacher, Martin Luther King Jr. For over a year, Black citizens of Montgomery walked, carpooled, and stood together. The result? The Supreme Court declared bus segregation unconstitutional. What an achievement. One quiet act of defiance led to a tidal wave of change. It wasn't just about a seat on a bus. It was about dignity, about the right to exist equally in public spaces, about a movement that would ripple across decades and generations. And it started with courage, with resolve, with one woman who said, enough. Across the oceans, another rebel fought a different empire with no weapons and no army. There was no war. His name was Mahatma Gandhi. Do you know what his rebellion was? Salt. His rebellion was salt. Yes, salt. The white stuff we add to almost all that we eat. 1930, the man walked 240 miles to the sea where he picked up a handful of salt and declared Indian independence. Why? Because the British had taxed salt, an essential item, making it illegal for Indians to gather their own salt. But remember, Gandhi's Salt March wasn't just about salt. It was about dignity, again, about reclaiming the most basic rights from a colonial power that saw itself as invincible. With every step, he challenged injustice, not through violence, but through moral force. He inspired millions to protest peacefully, break unjust laws, and awaken the conscience of an empire. Women, farmers, students, workers all stood up without lifting a single weapon, and the world took notice. His movement birthed a nation and inspired countless others around the world, from the U.S. civil rights movements to anti-apartheid activities, to every soul who ever believed that truth and courage could shake empire. It all began with a walk, a handful of salt, and an unbreakable will. All right, then. Now let's rewind 400 years to Renaissance Italy, a time of art, faith, an unquestioned tradition. And in the midst of it all, one man looks up towards the sky through a handmade telescope. He peers into the heavens and sees something dangerous. Oh my God! He discovers the earth is not the center of the universe. The planets orbit the sun. This man's name was Galileo Galilei, and had discovered a revelation that defied the teachings of the church and shattered centuries of belief. And he had to pay a price for this truth. Galileo was branded a heretic, forced to kneel and to recant, confined to his home, silenced by a decree. But even under house arrest, he never stopped thinking. He never stopped writing. And he never stopped believing in the power of observation, of evidence, and of reason. Today we call him the father of modern science, because he dared to choose truth over blind tradition. His legacy, the world awakened to discovery.
You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself.
All right, now let's forward to the 21st century. Yes, our century. The world is warming, oceans are rising, and forests are burning. And amid the noise, one voice begins in silence. A 15-year-old girl sits outside the Swedish parliament. She has a handmade sign that rests by her feet. The writing is in Swedish, but I won't try my Swedish. I will say it in English. The sign said, "School strike for climate." The young girl's name was Greta Thunberg. Her movement began as a solitary act, but became a rallying cry for an entire generation across continents. Millions of young people walked out of classrooms, not in rebellion against school or education, but in defiance of their future, humanity's future. Greta was mocked, dismissed, called naive. But she didn't flinch. Her words were clear, and they reached the halls, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the front page of Time magazine. She was not a politician, not a celebrity, just a teenager who refused to stay silent. Today, she's a symbol, not of fear, but of urgency, not of blame, but of action. Sometimes it only takes one voice to change the entire world. They said nothing could change the world, that the system was too big, too set in its way. But Rosa sat down, Gandhi walked, Galileo looked up, and Greta stood alone. And everything began to shift. What did they all have in common? They didn't accept the status quo. They weren't afraid to stand alone. They believed that one voice, one act of peaceful resistance could shake the world. And they were right. Rebellion isn't about being loud. Maybe it's about being clear. Clear in purpose, clear in courage. So if you ever feel small or powerless, remember Rosa. Remember Gandhi. Remember Galileo. And remember Greta. When you wonder if your voice matters, remember it only takes one spark to light a fire. The world doesn't need more followers. It needs brave rebels, rebels with a cause. Thanks for tuning in. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend. Let's keep the ripple going. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, stay brave, stay bold, and stay beautifully and peacefully rebellious. This has been a Panacea9 podcast by Gloria Y. One world, one family. From scattered fragments to global unity, healing our world together. Today, I'd like to shine a light on those who are often overlooked. You know, the ones who we call unsung heroes. Those whose legacies changed the course of history, even though they may not be household names every day. These are people who challenged systems, invented new paths, and lifted others while staying somewhat far from the spotlight. In a world obsessed with celebrity, it's easy to forget that quiet revolutionaries always have and continue to walk amongst us. Today we celebrate some of these legacy makers, and in their stories, you might just discover the hero in yourself.